This is not only an honor, it's a pleasure. And I believe since 2014, you're a part of Masterslagsy with your first visit. And definitely we had amazing experience together during your three times visit in the region. Wendy, I just want you to give me just a brief about you as Dr. Wendy, if you
Okay.
don't
Well,
mind.
it is an honor to be here and to see you again and to be able to talk about Birkman Method Assessment. I'm Wendy Andreen, and I've been certified to use the Birkman Method Assessment since 2007, and I've also a master certified in using it. My background comes from originally being my bachelor's is in business, but I was also a business teacher. So I taught high school for many years, as well as working in the corporate setting. But my heart was always drawn back to the students and to teaching. That's just where I felt like my calling was. So after being a high school business teacher for many years, then I earned my counseling degree. And I was a high school counselor for many years. I also did outside coaching for companies that were going through outplacement when the economy was not doing well. So I served as an outside consultant to help people who were going through the job transition. I later earned my doctorate in human resource development and training, and thought I was going to move into the corporate world full-time in that range, but I ended up back in counseling again. So
Which is your passion, I mean,
that is my
going back to,
passion.
yeah.
That's the
But
job.
this is leads me to a question. What makes you just get into Birkman?
So Birkman is, as having been a high school counselor and college counselor, and working for a high school, a very competitive public high school where the students apply to a lot of colleges. I'm also a parent of two adult children now, but at the time they were going through high school. Our son was a sophomore at the University of Texas at Austin, and I always say he'd gone through 3 majors in 4 semesters that he was in college, and he could do all of those majors, but he was not happy, and he just didn't know why he wasn't happy. So we were fortunate at the time. The University of Texas Career Center actually offered the Birkman Assessment in their Career Center, and I was not familiar with it from an academic standpoint. I had only seen it used in the corporate world. So he took the assessment there. He brought home his results. He walked me through his report, and immediately, as both a parent and a counselor, looking at his results, I looked at him and I said, Michael, you are just not going to be somebody who works from 8 to 5, sits behind a desk and wears a suit to work every day. And he said, no, and that's what all these majors are going to make me do. For him, Birkman was data. He saw it as data, and it confirmed for him who he was, and it made it all right for him to then adjust his major. And he went on to pursue a master's and a PhD, and he is very happy at what he's doing. But what I learned from that was I need to learn more about Birkman from an academic side. And interestingly, Sharon Birkman and I attend the same church. And so we were having a conversation one day, and I was telling her about our son and what was going on. And Sharon was like, well, you need to get certified in Birkman. So I did. And that was in 2007. And I've been using Birkman with teenagers and college students, mainly those 2 groups, since 2007.
Is that with your son? Leads me to a questions when it helps him choosing the majors that is like a passion to him. Is that in a way or another impacted on his personality and behavior?
That is an excellent point. And a majority of the assessments out there that are inventories are only going to look at a student's or a person's interests. And then from the interest, they will then say, well, here are some jobs or here are some career areas. Birkman is very unique in that their algorithm includes not only the interests, but they also factor in personality. And that's exactly what we saw in Michael's report, because his interests all aligned with the majors he had been selecting. It's when we reviewed the personality side and put those together, that's when we could see where the fit was and where there wasn't a fit.
Okay. That sounds really great. What is the most challenging things that the students facing on choosing the majors? Is it family issues? Is it looking for the best job or the best income? Is it a non-awareness of what exactly the students wants? Because since 2014, as you know, here in Master's Legacy in the region, we've done like thousands of students. And of course, you're familiar with the reports that we've made at the Career Campus Student Report and even the Career Campus Job Seekers. But I have a lot of stories from the students and each and every one, either especially on the high schools, and there is a lot of challenges. Well, you came to Saudi and you did just I remember in Noura University and then Al Faisal University, and definitely you're aware of even the majors of the. So, what is the most challenges that the students in the high school face? I mean, in terms of choosing the majors.
Well, you mentioned some of them. Some of them there's an expectation from parents that they think there are certain majors that would be the best, when in fact it may not really be a good fit for the student. So that sometimes is a factor. What we are finding in the United States right now is that many of the very popular or selective universities that the students want to attend are making it part of the application to identify a major. Now, many of the universities, you can identify a major, but once you get to the university, if you want to change your major, that's not a problem. So I need to make sure it's clear that we have over 2,000 four-year universities in this country. And most of them are going to give students the opportunity to change their major if they need to once they get there. But we have a very solid group of what we call super selective universities, and that includes the Ivy Leagues, that includes the University of Texas at Austin, that includes Stanford University. And what happens is these schools are asking students to identify a major, and in many cases, their admission to the university is based on the major that they select. So since our students most of them go directly from high school into college, that means they are filling out college applications the summer after their junior year when they're 17 years old, and they are trying to decide what major they're going to pick and then be able to write essays that support it and have activities that support it so that the college will admit them to the university. And that's one of our biggest challenges right now. And that's why it's so important for our teenagers to have the Birkman Assessment, because it gives them some clarity on direction. It might help them decide a major, just like my son. He could handle all the majors he had selected, but he wasn't finding a fit with those from the personality side. And so by having a Birkman, their sophomore or junior year in high school, it gives them some clarity and gives them more direction so they know what majors maybe to avoid and what majors to focus on.
Is that one of the things, I mean, how to educate, let's say, if we take just that one of I believe this is one of the major factors affecting or even helping the kids to choose their major is the parents. Is a way that how to educate those parents is the child from the childhood. You can notice from the way what they like, what they're interested. Is that going to give us just a clue? And how's that related to Bergman? Because
Definitely.
I've been doing a lot of coachings with the students and even the parents and a mindset in our area. Well, definitely, we're not questioning the intention of the parents because all parents they need the best for the kids, definitely in all words.
Right.
But again, I want my kid to be a doctor. I want my kid to be an engineer. This is the top two. I mean, every parents they wanted to see because they
Yeah.
think it's a secure job and it's a future and stuff. And I had some stories I can share it with you later. But how is that? How we as a Berkman consultant helping or educate the parents?
Excellent question, and it's definitely a factor. So one of the things I require when I do a Birkman review with a student is that at least one parent must sit in on that review. So I never, for a teenager, now once they're in college, I may be doing the Birkman just with the college student, but for any of my clients that are still in high school, I always require at least one parent, preferably a parent. Sometimes it's a grandparent or another adult, but it's usually the parent. I need them to sit in on that. And we know for many reasons. One, teenagers aren't going to relate all the information back to their parents after it's over. Plus, it's a lot of information to take in. Birkman has a lot of, it's very deep. And so they need somebody else to hear it at the same time. And when they hear it together, then they can have conversations about it. And I'm always intrigued because whether it's on a Zoom or in person, the facial expressions from the parents when they have those aha moments that where they realize, I think my child should be a business major or an engineering major, and then they realize based on the Birkman and that's just not going to be the right fit. And what's interesting is the students and I will be talking to each other, and the parent is right there. And the parent will oftentimes tell me later, I never heard my son or daughter say those things to me before about what they like to do and what they don't like to do. So we get involved in our conversation, and the parents are suddenly more aware of what their students really love to do, what they don't like to do. And so the Birkman opens up that channel of conversation. And we're looking to see what the Birkman shares based on how the student answered the questionnaire. And so when we see that engineering or medicine is really not their fit, then the parents tend to relax a little more. And you and I know we can say medicine, we can say business, we can say engineering, but the piece that the student also has to bring to that table is the academics. So if a parent wants their child to be an engineering major, that student still has to be really strong in math and science because they're going to have to take calculus and differential equations and physics. And sometimes academically, that's just not the student's strength.
Yeah, I mean, leads me also, we as a consultant, what is the most advices that we could give to the students to prepare themselves for the college? I mean, in the high school, and this is because this is their life. I mean, this is their future, finding their path, their passion, which is going to impact in their whole future life.
Absolutely. And so when we're walking through the Birkman, I'm constantly asking the students questions. So a simple explanation of my model would be, before a student ever takes the Birkman with me, I'm in contact with the parent because the parent's the one who's going to initiate this. And so I ask the parent for some information about the student. I need to know, I need to know their name and their email address to send the link, but I also ask for whatever grade level they're in. I want to know what their classes are that year. Just send me an email with some brief information, hobbies, activities, if they've taken any tests yet, do they have those scores? So I get that information before the student ever answers the questionnaire. And then they answer the questionnaire, the reports come back to me, and now I have information to compare. I can look to see what kind of interests and activities and clubs the student is involved in. I can see what their courses are, what kind of grades they're making. And now I'm looking at it in alignment with the Birkman reports. So when we meet, then I can ask them more direct questions about what their interests are. So for example, I did a Birkman today with a young man, a sophomore in high school, and he thinks he wants engineering, but he hasn't been doing any kind of outside activities that speak to him really caring about being an engineer. He's good in math, he likes science. And so when I asked him, I said, well, tell me about, are you in the robotics club at your high school? We have, some of our high schools have an academy of engineering. It's really just where they can take electives that support an engineering interest. And he's like, he hasn't done any of that. And I said, well, do you like to build things, or what things do you do in your own time? And he was like, I really don't. So then my question is, how do you know that you really want engineering? And we're back to the same thing. He thinks engineering sounds like a good field, but we don't really know. And engineering did show up as one of his possibilities. But when we start putting it together for college applications and letting a college know that they're interested in engineering, these in the United States, the colleges are looking for, well, what additional activities are you doing to support why you're picking this major? And so I end up I ask them a lot of questions about what they do with in their free time or their hobbies, or no matter what major we're considering.
And this is definitely, I mean, I'm assuming that low outdoor, low technical, even though high scientific, high numerical. But again, low outdoor definitely is not going to be an engineer to go outside. If it is a low technical, and I mean, it's going to drain his energy in a way or another, just doing engineering using hands, right?
Well, so this is a great example. So the young man that I work with today thinks he's interested in engineering. His personality in Birkman is very blue.
Okay.
So he's that thoughtful, reflective, he's low assertiveness, he's low social energy. And then, so we had to have this, and he's so quiet. So when I start asking him about, well, tell me about any opportunities you've had in your high school to demonstrate leadership, or where do you, when you're doing a group project at school, are you the person that helps to lead the project? And he was more like, well, no, if somebody else wants to do it, that's fine. So you and I know that in the world of engineering, and I'm married to an engineer, I know that most engineers that I see from a personality side of Birkman are going to look more red or more green. They're going to have, as you said, there's going to be that high technical from the interest side, and definitely high scientific, and outdoors usually supporting that as well. So where he has the red interests, so that part was covered, but his personality was so reserved and so introverted that then we had to have the conversation. Well, when you're working in a very technical field where most people are going to look very red or green, I want to make sure your voice is heard. And so I do a lot of coaching with if they're a very blue personality, but they're looking to work in a very red industry or green industry. Now we have Birkman to help support it. And that's where the parents were just wonderful, because they were like, okay, now I understand. And I said, he can, I told him, I said, you can still be a leader, but you're going to be that more quiet, reserved leader. And I want to make sure your voice is heard. And that applies as a teenager. If you're meeting with a college admissions rep, or you're talking to somebody in the engineering department, are they really going to get a sense that you like engineering and you want to do these hands-on things and you want to build things? And are they going to feel that energy from your personality, because he's so quiet and so introverted? And that's where Birkman helps us to do the coaching side of it. And that's also where some of these students then realize, well, maybe I don't want to work in that kind of industry, because that's that's too high energy for me. So maybe I'll
Yeah.
do better more in research.
Yes, yes, yes. And this is, did you just come across with all the, I mean, the students that you coached them that after you did the Birkman, does this impact on their behaviors with the family if there is a challenge between the parents and their kids and stuff like that? Is that help?
Oh, that definitely. I have definitely had parents who will in the middle of the review or conversation will then look at their student and go, "Oh, that's why we don't always agree," or "Now I understand." And, or a parent who is very yellow and really likes to have everything done in an orderly way and wants to make sure that the student is on track and on time, and the student is much more laid back and much more relaxed about that. When they can see the scores from the Birkman, then they look at it and go, oh, okay, we need, I need to approach this differently. And it also, I also coach the student and say, so for example, when we talk about the college application process, and that's filling out the applications, writing essays, creating a resume, all of those details that have to take place, that's a very, in Birkman language, that's a very yellow process. And for a student who has no yellow in their report, they're low administrative, low numerical, and low insistence on the personality side. Now we have that conversation about, okay, you need somebody who is going to help you keep up with the deadlines and make sure that you are getting everything turned in early. And so that's part of that coaching then becomes just by default, it helps the student see that, oh, I do need mom or dad to help me with this. But it also helps mom and dad see that it's not going to come easily to that student.
Yeah, I remember one story is because this is what leads me. I know that Bergman suggested to do the assessment for like 14, 15 years old, which is we're talking about 10 grades they can do. But I came across with the ninth grade students. And right now the kids is not like us before. They're very open and very educated. It's if we compare, I mean, the age time. So the family was like struggling with that with their daughter, and she's a kind of a quiet, but they know that she's a smart. And when we did the Berkman to her, one of the top interests is artistic and musical and literary. It's about 90s, and obviously she's blue and blue and blue. All her symbols is totally blue. And it was in the summer. So one of the things that I advise the parents is just to put her in some courses of music or even painting and stuff. Because during my coaching with her, I asked her, so what happened? She's got into music, she's got into, drawing. And after the vacation was like 3, 4 months, she was being able to play on the violins and guitar and she drew and she did a lot of books because her literally was like 96 and stuff like that. So what happened when she gets into the 10th grade? She was in the first on the class. So what happened? We did not change the mind, but what happened? We just need to recharge the interest. And that leads to the question is gonna impact on everything. Your behavior, what likes, and how you communicate with your just a small family, your parents, your brothers and sisters, and this is gonna enrich the confident on yourself in a way or another, isn't that?
Absolutely. And one of the things that when we are walking a student or any client through their interest report, Birkman always says, look at the scores that are 70 and higher. Those are our high interests. And we have to remember interests are our motivators. And so when we focus on the high interests that are 70 and above, we're looking for, well, what activities, just like you explained, taking the art, taking the music, that's what's motivating her. And even if she doesn't want to be a professional musician, she still needs that support for herself. That's where she gets motivated, and that's what gives us our energy. I worked with one gentleman who was in business, and he thought, well, maybe I've been in the wrong business. I'm just not happy with what I'm doing. And exactly what you just described, he had a high musical score in his interests. He also had high administrative. But I said, what are you doing with your music? I said, you've got this really, in the 90s, you have this really high musical score. Tell me what you're doing to meet that score. And he stopped and he said, oh my, I used to play the saxophone when I was in high school and in college. And then I just got so involved with work that he said, my saxophone's just been sitting in the closet for like 10 years. And I said, you need to get that saxophone out again. And even on weekends,
Oh
just
yeah.
play. And that's exactly what you were describing, was he needs his music. And that, even though that's not part of the career, that's part of what gives him energy. And so remember, the high interests are what give us energy. And if we have to spend too much time in the really low interests, that's what can drain our energy. So we are always looking for what career path will use most of our high interests. And if it doesn't necessarily fit with a career, are we still meeting that high interest need through a hobby or an activity?
And leads me also, it's not when we're talking about here as an interest, it's not about the skill, because the skill can be gained by education, training, rehearsing, practicing. But one of the most important advice, correct me if I'm mistaken, I always just go with the students, just focus on your top interest instead of just spending and drain your energy by focusing on the low interest. Even though if you're a skill, because you can get a skill anytime, but the question is, are you interested or passionate about it? Because this is what's going to impact your whole life. And so leads me to our questions. What is your advice to the parents so they can help their kids without affecting their decisions on choosing their future major?
Well, I think a lot of it are the areas we've already talked about. We need to look at I mean, Birkman helps us. Birkman gives us this empirical assessment that we don't have to guess what's going on. We have this beautiful, very elegant report that helps us see that student with more clarity. So we look at the interests and we look to see, well, what are those high interests and what do they look like in terms of a potential career? And then we add in the personality side that says, okay, what do I need? And remember, Dr. Birkman always shared, the needs scores become really critical. We want to make sure those needs are met. And that's part of what makes Birkman so unique, is that they factor in not just our interests, but our personality. So when we look at careers, it's like, do I look like other people in these career areas? And am I going to find that interest? So I'm an example of that. And this was long before I ever knew about Birkman, but I started off as an accounting major in college. I have a business degree. I took accounting as an elective in high school. I enjoyed it. I thought, okay, I'm going to be a business major and I'm going to be an accounting major. And in my third semester of college accounting, that was tax accounting, I was like, I don't really care for this at all. But something inside me knew I needed to do something that was more people related. And so I switched to management, and then I also added the teaching certificate. So now we fast forward to 2007, when I actually take the Birkman, and my numerical score is not super low, but it's low. But my social service score is a 98. I need to be with people. And I'm high literary and I'm high administrative. So when you put all three of those together, being a teacher, being a counselor, being a coach, all makes perfect sense, because that's where my energy comes from. That's why I always said and Amy just laughs at me. Amy Shepley laughs because I said I can sit and talk to anybody about Birkman 24/7.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is also like me. My administrative is 11 out of 99. My numerical is 9 out of 99. Even though I have a high social service is like 96, high in artistic, high in music, high in scientific, and the rest of
Right.
it, it's just very low. And the things, even though I studied business. So if the time goes back and I did the Bergman, study was because it drains my energy. And here is the key. Yet I'm skilled, by taking the major, but I'm not interested. That's why I couldn't just be cool with my major and work with it. And this is one of the things I'm using Birkman right now, even with my team when I hire a new candidate. It's not about your degree or your experience, yet it matters. We look at it, but I need to see your report before the whole things. Where is your interest? So I can just match because I'm not worried from HR perspective and expertise as a consultant, as an HR. I can just even teach you and give you and enroll you in any training of a business so you can get the skill. But the question is, are you interested or not? And that's why one of the team, Haifa, if you know her, and high administrative, high numerical, and even though she studied something totally different. And this is why it helps even, and this is leads me how Bergman helps you in your doctorate as a in human resource.
How does it help me in that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the, okay, so when I'm working with a client, and especially a teenager, one of the things I start with as part of the introduction, and it sounds silly, but it's really very important. First of all, I tell them, I said, today you're going to learn a new language, and it's a language of colors. And it's just meant to give you something it'll help you remember the information about your Birkman more easily. And I want you to speak those colors. So I'm constantly speaking the colors to them as we go through their report. The second thing I share with them is, I said, you're also going to learn your Birkman superpowers today. And Birkman we do have superpowers with our Birkman, because we know that initially it's to learn about ourselves and to know more about ourselves, not just from the personality side, but the interest in careers. I said, but the ripple effect of that is that you can now look at other people with more clarity and more understanding. And so that's part of that conversation you and I just had about parents and students understanding each other better. Even if the parent hasn't taken a Birkman, they've still heard this information. And then I tell the student, so then the next step is your teachers at school, you can start to understand their style better, and it builds better relationships. If you're applying for a job, when you have a college roommate, when you have new professors at college, all of this ripple effect of what Birkman is providing, and that translates to the same thing from the HR side. If I'm working in a company, that's why Birkman is so popular in companies, to work with teams and to build that understanding and to open up communication so that we all work better together. So all, the applications of Birkman are just pretty much endless, no matter what career, whether you're looking at it from career, family, personal, something within the corporation, just even from looking at the hiring part of it, it's just so we have a better understanding of who we are and who we're working with.
And during, God bless you, all this years experience with the schools and universities, what is the top advices that, if you can put it in a points, to the schools, to the universities, to the teachers? What is your advice to them as a Berkman consultant and communicating and with their students, what they can do better? I mean, schools and
Exactly. So I have always said that whether it's a high school or a college or a department or anything within a university, if everybody had a Birkman, that includes the professors, the faculty, the administration, the students. I said, can you imagine how much better the teaching would be inside a classroom? If I know all my students' Birkman reports, and I do a group report, and I know that in one class that I'm teaching, I might have a lot of blue students, but in another class that I'm teaching, maybe more of those students are more green or red. But we know we'll still have a mix of everybody in the class. Now I know how to address that class. If I have a room full of red personalities, my teaching style will be much more direct, more bullet point, because that's what they want to hear. They want to cut to the chase more quickly. The blue students may want more time to think about it and process it and ask questions. and the greens want to share and talk.
Mhm.
And so I just think, the dynamic in a classroom could be so much more energetic because we would be addressing more of the students' learning styles, and that would be helpful. So just from the faculty to student combination would be great. The other piece I want to share is most families don't realize that a majority of students in the United States, now I cannot speak for your country, but a majority of the students in the United States do not graduate from college in 4 years. In fact, when you try to find the graduation rate for most universities in the United States, they post the 6-year graduation rate, not the 4-year graduation rate, because a majority of the universities, I think our national average is like 60% of students graduate in 4 years. Most of them are taking 5 to 6 years. All right. So if we start with a Birkman, and part of what, there are a lot of factors that drive that. Sometimes it's financial and the student has to stop going to school for a while. Sometimes there are personal issues. But one of the main factors is students change majors. Our son was one of them, and he needed an extra semester in college to get everything in. So if they're changing majors multiple times in college, that's extending their time in college, and that becomes even more expensive. So now we've added another year's worth of college, of financial expense to the price of college. So if we start with a Birkman, we at least narrow it down so that maybe our student isn't starting off in engineering, which isn't really the right fit, and we find the right program for them, and so that they can plan to graduate in 4 years.
And now in Saudi Arabia, one of the new things that it's being happening from the Ministry of Education, and I think everybody, every entity, every government is working toward 2030 vision with all the initiatives. So the Ministry of Education, this is one of the things that they give the opportunities that you as a high school, you can go into science or you can go into business or you can go into, so, and this is one of the things. And I believe that Birkman can help big time on those students, especially when they finish the 9th grade and going to the 10th grade, preparing the high school in choosing exactly what is their passionate, whether it's a business, whether it's science, whether it's computing, whatever it is, because this is going to make their life easy. Aligning it with the Birkman assessment, defining their interest, it's going to help them big time. I mean, going through all this stuff. Let me share with you something because I have a presentation with so many schools. Of course, we've done Birkman with a lot of schools in our area. So I believe there is one of the. I'll just share it with you if you can just have a say here about some of the universities. Of course, this is some of the. Is it clear?
Oh,
This is
yes,
some of
it is.
this is more than 60 universities using the Birkman, I mean, in the United States. And this
Right.
is what South Carolina have done. You can just even
Oh, I know.
add
I'm
a
so
few.
excited. Yes, South Carolina's an active Birkman user. Yes.
And also here, I can just even how this impact on the students, especially on their grades and even on the masters. So even MROI. And here, one of the percentages, if you can, more than 5,000 students completed, and they have like 15 to 10 certified, and 90% matches between. So this is leads me to questions during all the students that you've done a coaching session with them. What is the percentage of the match according to the result of the Bergman?
That's interesting because to be honest, I've never really calculated for myself. What I have asked is I've asked parents to, because I work mainly one-on-one with students, once we've done a Birkman, I may not hear from them again after that. So I honestly can't tell you, I don't have a statistical number to share as far as what the percentage is. what I do share is I do ask parents, I said, you know, if you have questions or if something isn't matching up, always feel free to contact me. And if we need to review the student's Birkman. When I do hear from parents, I usually what the email is or the text message is, I just want to thank you so much because of Birkman, my student, you know, our student found the right fit for their major. And I will share one example of that is, and this also speaks to a student thinking they should do a certain major. So here's something that also comes up that's a challenge for students. Anytime a girl is strong in math and science, there is a really big push that they should be an engineering major or some kind of science. It could be medical as well. And that's, I mean, I'm glad that they're strong in math and science. And yes, for many of them, that is definitely a good path, and I never want to discourage that. But I worked with one student a few years ago, and she strong in math and science in her school, excellent test scores, excellent grades, but her real love was writing, and her Birkman had high literary. Her Birkman also had high social service. The scientific was solid, but it wasn't as high as some of the others. And so when she started in college, she started off as a biology major because she thought, well, I probably will go pre-med. And because I'm interested in it, and I'm good in math and science. And at the end of the first semester, and it was the beginning of the second semester of her freshman year, I actually got a phone call from the student herself. She hadn't even talked to her parents. She called me and she said, I am so unhappy in my, and she said, I walk into those biology classes and she said, I am so depressed. And she said, it's not because I can't do the work. So then she called, I said, well, let's talk to your parents. So we had a three-way. The daughter was at the university. The parents were here in Houston. I was in Houston. We connected, and I pulled up her Birkman just as a reminder. And I asked her, I said, well, tell me what you're doing outside of class. And she said, well, I joined the student newspaper. And she said, I'm having a great time doing that. And I said, well, let's go back and revisit that Birkman of yours. And so we saw her literary score that was in the 90s, and we saw her high administrative score, and she's very green from the personality side. And I said, remember, we had this conversation about you majoring in communication or journalism. And she said, I know. And she said, and that's where I need to be. But I didn't think, she said, I thought I should be the science major because I was good in science. But that's not who her personality was. And so she graduated with a communications degree. She's been working in journalism, and she found her fit. And her parents never made her be the science major. She put the pressure on herself for that. So it's the same thing. So whether it's coming from the parent, or sometimes the students feel like, well, I really can't major in that. That's not really a good enough major, when in fact it was her perfect fit, and Birkman identified it from the beginning.
Yeah, I remember in King Saud University, which is one of the top universities in Saudi Arabia, if you can see it on the screen, that's a live picture. So we've done just a project with them with 400 students. And I remember I gathered like 25 of the consultants, that some of them, you know them, it's been certified since 2014. And we've done the assessment for 2 days for 400. 200. And what happened? We brought all the team from Masters and then the students were doing the assessment, some of them on their iPad, some of them in the mobile. And the minute they finish, we pull immediately, instantly the report. And the students goes to the booth, if you can see in the picture, and sit with the consultants, and we've done that case studies, and 4.9 out of 5 answers the 400 that this assessment helped them choosing their majors, and even knowing their personality and what is the future job. And we've done that also with one of the schools. If, I don't know if you do remember. I think Mark is the one who did it with me, the certified. And we come up with those, analysis. Professors, female students, male students, and how this assessment provide them a useful about
Oh,
their personality,
that's
information
cool.
to help them find the right job. So we have a statistic on most of the case study during these years in some of the schools, some of the university, and how that tools that can help them shape their life and find their potentiality.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. And one of the things that I share when we start talking about selecting those majors at the universities, because Birkman is so deep and so rich in the information, one of the examples I share with when I'm talking to families or speaking to groups in the United States is that if we look, for example, if we just pick, for example, one of the job family areas, which is computer and mathematical science, I always ask the family or the student, and I know when you're working with all of these students, it's like, okay, well, I have a high computer and mathematical science job family score. Then I say,
Mhm.
now let's look at the other job families that are sitting next to that are also high, because sometimes a student will say, well, I'm not sure I really want to major in computer science. So I said, well, let's look to see what else you have. So we look at the interests, but I also look to see what's sitting next to the computer and mathematical science job family. So one of the examples is if the arts and media, sports and entertainment is close to it, that student, and if they've got high artistic and high technical in their interests, they might be more inclined to do something that's web design or graphic design or UX design. It's still computer, but it's from the more creative side. And then if I'm looking at it and we see business and finance is sitting very close to it, and the student also has high numerical or high administrative, now we say, well, maybe for you, computers might look more like the business degree, but management information systems, not just necessarily programming. So that's part of the beauty of Birkman is, I always say Birkman's not going to pigeonhole you and tell you what major you need to be. They're going to help you see where are the best fits. And so that's why I always look at the surrounding job families and then come back to the interest to see where does that look like it applies. So one of the things I did, I looked at Princess Noura and I looked at King Faisal University, and they both have beautiful examples of if a student has high computer science or high computer mathematical science as a job major, they have high technical, they have high scientific, where might I find a major at Princess Noura? So they've got, and their website is very easy to follow. It's wonderful, but they've got all their colleges easily identified. And so I could find in their humanities college, they have an arts and design, and they have a graphic design and digital media. So that could be a match if that's it. In their sciences college, they have an
Mhm.
actual college of information technology. So yes, that would be the place to start. But we also know that they have engineering and they have the business and they in their applied college, they have a computer science program. So now when I'm coaching a student and we're talking about majors, I said, first of all, I always ask them, is there a college that you're interested in? Because I want to work with the college that they want. And so I ask them
Mhm.
for one or two colleges that they're interested in, and then I take their Birkman information and I go to that college's website and I go through their majors. I look through the different colleges or departments, and then I just look at the alphabetical listing of majors. And then I start showing them where they could find that major, but it might show up in different departments or it might be labeled differently. And so Princess Noura was a great example because there are different departments where you could get something that is computer science related. It will just depend on what does the rest of the Birkman look like. And when I looked at King Faisal University, they have an arts college, and they have a computer sciences and information technology college. They have business and they have the sciences. And I can find something that's computer related in each of those colleges. So that's, again, that's part of the conversation with the students. So we just don't say generically, oh, well, you should be a computer science major. We look at their interests, we look at what the university offers, and we say, okay, well, here's where you could be a really good fit with your computer. If it's in business, might be information systems. If it's in engineering, it could be more of the hardware side or programming side. So that's Birkman makes it easier to help us talk to the students, because let's be honest, 16 and 17-year-old students really don't have any idea. When they hear computer science major, they don't really even know what that means. And
True,
you and I
very
know
true.
for some people, it's about the hardware and the networking or building the system. For other people, it's the coding or the programming. For others, it's the application of it, using it as a UX designer, a UI designer, web designer. And that's the part where the students then begin to get more of an idea of, oh, okay, now I have some ideas about what I could do with computer science. And I don't want to be a programmer, but I might be the person who can apply it. Or I might have high technical and I want to be the person who networks systems. And that's where I see some of the aha moments, and both when I'm working with students in college and in high school, because we're asking them again to select majors, and especially our teenagers, even if we say a business major, there's information systems, there's accounting, there's finance, there's marketing, there's management, there's entrepreneurship. And, these wonderful students, they're like, I don't know which one I want.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why, the challenge is happening. I mean, I always, when I just even had like thousands of the students, I coached them. I asked them a question, what is your dream job? And this is the questions that, and whatever. You cannot find just there is like a kind of a gap in their awareness. What do they need to study? So, what job you looking for? And I asked the question, if he said a doctor, why do you want to be a doctor? So, can you tell me more about your scores in biology, in chemistry, in physics, and stuff like that? And then yet, some of them they answer you, yeah, I'm good at it, but I don't like it.
Right.
And it leads me to question, you don't like it because of a subject or because of a teacher?
Exactly. That could make a
Because
difference
that's a
too.
trigger, because if he's not aligned with their teachers, no matter what's the subject, if he's like it, you can find the score is going down, and he doesn't want to attend the classes and all this stuff. So again, this is leads me to, it's not only the interest, because again, it's about the behavior, the attitude, which is the interest impact on that. Did you just even have more cases as challenging with the students and their parents in your experience?
I would say that has not been a major issue, and I think mainly because the parents are more open to the different kinds of majors. I think culturally, to be honest, culturally, I mean, there are some families that they are very focused on they should be a science major or a doctor or an engineer. But I'm finding more and more, and I don't know whether it's because of COVID and everything changed with COVID and people just are dealing with other issues. It's what's best for my students. So I haven't seen that be a big issue. To be honest, my biggest challenge is students have a certain perception of which university is good enough.
Oh yeah.
And you and I know it's that same sort of thing. So, but their grades, a lot of it, and so an example today, or not today, but recently, I worked with a student. Right now, they're straight A student. they haven't really taken any, they're a sophomore, so I don't really have a lot of test scores to work with, but they've got straight A students. They're taking what colleges will say are the most rigorous courses, meaning the highest level that high school offers, whether it's AP or IB. But when I ask a student, when I explain to a student, I said, you know, the colleges that you're looking at, the very super selective, and we actually, in the world of college counseling, we have a phrase, these are these super rejective colleges. So Stanford University, that only admits around 4% of their students.
Well, I need to study in Stanford, I need to study in Yale, I need to study in Harvard, I need to study in
Exactly.
Columbia, and this is being engraved as a culture for the students since they're young, you know? I
They
wanted to
think
see my kid in Yale, I wanted to see my kid in Stanford and Harvard, and they don't know exactly how this is impact even their studying life during the high
right.
school.
So it's
Yeah.
not, so then I have to, then part of the coaching is for the parents as well, because what I had to explain to the student is I said, it's wonderful that you've got all A's. It's wonderful that you're taking the hardest courses available. I said, but what you need to understand is that that when a university gets 70,000 applications and they only admit around 10,000 students, most of those students have the same straight A's that you have. They'll have the same high test scores that you have. I said, what is setting you apart? What makes you look different to those colleges? And there's a phrase that I've been trying to coach all my students, and I want you to coach your high school students as well. They need to know this phrase, intellectual curiosity. And when you look at the websites for the Ivy Leagues, for Stanford, for Duke, for Rice University, somewhere in their description, they will talk about, we look for students who are curious. We look for students who are going beyond the classroom. And that's when you describe the student who was doing all of these programs in the summer. I have to explain to these students, if you think you want to be an engineering major or a business major, what are you doing in the summers, or what are you doing after school that looks like I'm really interested in business? And it doesn't mean you have to spend thousands of dollars on a summer program. They're looking to see, what are you doing in your own neighborhood that might benefit others? So I've got a student who's really good at computers. Well, he went to a senior retirement center and he volunteered, and he helped these seniors learn how to use their cell phones, learn how to use their computers. So, but he wants to do something that's computer related or engineering related. So he's demonstrating to the university as part of his application that I'm interested enough in this that I'm finding activities that relate to it. And so that's part of my coaching when we get through with the Birkman and we talk about, okay, we talk about the majors that are available at the university that they selected that look like they're Birkman. And then I add on, now tell me what you're going to be doing as extracurricular activity or a side project outside of the classroom that is going to tell the university why you love this major. Because most of these highly selective or highly rejective universities, one of their essay questions is almost always, why do you want this major? And it's not, they don't want to hear, well, because you're a really great university and you've got a great, rating. They want to know the student's personal story, what drives them. Do they follow the stock market on their own? And they love this, they may not invest any actual money in the stock market, but they have tracked 2 or 3 stocks over the course of 2 or 3 years because they like to see what's happening with the economy. Or a student that's really interested in environmental science who volunteered and designed a project where he went and planted trees down by Galveston, Texas to help prevent erosion. So, I mean, there are projects that students can be doing, but they're not thinking about that. And so that's part of the coaching that we're trying to start early with the students is, you may not know exactly what you want to do with computer science or engineering or business, but you're going to, if you're going to apply to these very selective universities, they're going to ask you an essay question about, why do you want this major? Why do you want to attend this university? And they don't want to hear what's in the brochure. They want to know that you've done your research and your homework about that university and why you feel like you're a really good fit. So then I can come back to their Birkman. Once again, I just come back to Birkman and say, okay, let's look at your interests. Let's look at your personality. How might you fit in? Let's look at the clubs and organizations on the website for that university. Students they're great at using their phones and investigating things of interest. I said, I want you to go look at the college's website, and I want you to see what student organizations are related to the School of Business, what clubs, what do they do? Do they do volunteer work? So that you can actually say, wow, I really will fit in with this. So the coaching is so much broader than, the students have to have more than just the grades and the test scores these days. They have, part of their story is they have to have done over and above the classroom and demonstrate this intellectual curiosity in a field of interest for them. And so I use their Birkman. I say your time is limited. So a great example is if a student has high technical, high scientific, high administrative, I said, what volunteer work can you do that lets you do this hands-on outdoor? And so like the young man who was planting trees, he was high outdoor. So he was doing something he liked to do, and it was still going to help benefit his college application.
So if you're working in the Ministry of Educations and you have the decision to make changes, what is the advices that you could advise to the high schools in a sense of enlarging, doing summer activities, doing stuff for the schools? So that will help them at least give a role for the students to help them to identify exactly what you like. Because again, let's say if you do what you like and what you're passionate, you don't have to work for the rest of your life, whether it's a university, whether it's a vocational. Because right now the mindset is about the certificate, getting a bachelor's degree in a university. And one of the most important things right now, and I really supported that in Saudi Arabia, is they're focusing right now on the vocational. It's not about just even having a degree and a bachelor, because a lot of people, I'm one of them. I got a degree, bachelor, but I'm not working with it. So I like spent 5 years of my life just getting a bachelor degree, and I'm not working with it. And then life is so short. So it's not about just the degree, it's about
Yeah.
also what do you like to do. And now one of the initiative is even to enlarge the mindset of the young people. Is not about the college, it's about what you like to do. It might be going to painting, plumbing, graphic design, diplomas and stuff like that, which is right now supported by the vocational in Saudi Arabia. And I think that this is one of the things when we do the Birkman reports for professional and non-professional, and gives you just even some of the, yeah, so you can go. So back to the questions, what's your advice to the high school, what they can do to boost the awareness of the students?
Well, many of the high schools in the United States have reintroduced, we will say, some of that more of that hands-on technology side. Now, the students still need to get the high school graduation requirements that will set them up for entrance into college. But as you mentioned, not every student is designed, they're either not ready to go to a 4-year university, or they just really don't have an interest in getting a 4-year degree, but they're still very talented. And so we do have the vocational programs are making a comeback, and that's excellent. So that beyond high school, there still could be a certification or a 2-year associate's degree, or something that gives them more of the applied sciences or technology. And that's definitely, we need that. When I speak to parent groups, And when I was still the college counselor at Memorial High School, when we'd have the parent meetings and the auditorium would be filled with parents, and I very confidently would stand in front of them as we talked about opportunities for their students and to do, you know, what's best for your student academically and professionally. I would tell the families, I said, I am standing before you with 3 college degrees. And I have a friend who's a plumber who makes more money in a year than I do.
True,
And
very true.
and I said, I don't care how high tech this world becomes, we will always need electricians, we will always need plumbers, we will always need contractors. We will need in those career fields, the installation, the construction, the production. We will always need all of those. And there are people that's what they love to do. That's that hands-on part of it. And they want to get a certification. Welders make a lot of money. and that's, you know, but they can earn that certification and they can go out and be on the job in a year or 2 years. And they love it because they're not sitting behind a desk. They're not having to wear a suit to work. They are using their talents and skills. So I want to make sure that all students' needs are met and that there's no stigma attached to any student who is not suited to earn a 4-year degree. And for some students, they just may not be ready to start that college experience. So the example of the plumber that I know, he started as a plumber. He earned his apprenticeship. He was working as a plumber, but he owns his own business now. He did go back to school and get the business courses that he needed. So we just don't want to put our students in a box or think from a parent's side, oh, my child's not a doctor, my child's a plumber. It's what's best for that student. What gifts and talents did that student get? And sometimes those gifts and talents show up as being a doctor, and sometimes they show up as being the electrician or the welder or the plumber. And we need all of them. And they are all respectable and they are all contributing to society.
One of the things in the stories that just I remember, which is triggered with what you're saying, I did the coaching sessions. The lady, she's a branch manager in a bank, and her background is finance. And surprisingly, her technical is 99. And I was like asking her, what do you do with your hands? She said, I have a hobby since my childhood. I fix cars.
See?
And guess what? She did a business right now as a female mechanical shop. So eventually it's never too late. And this is
Right.
what Roger Brigman says, that your interest is shaped from your childhood. That what the tool can help you to identify the top interest and then you focus on it. So there's many stories. And I remember also a teacher in Doha, in Qatar. She's been like 18 years as a teacher. She teach geographic, and also her technical was like 96. And she's a kind of a person, she said, like 20 years, no labor gets in my house, either a carpenter or plumber. I'm fixing the whole things. I have just the workshops. And what she did, she retired after my coaching sessions to her, almost like we did like 6 coaching sessions after the Birkman. So she did a business of services, and she did a mobile app, and she said she published on the social media. I wish I did the Birkman 20 years back. It's a printing mini machine. Finally, I found my passion. So it's not, again, and this is leads me, it's not about the skill, it's about what's your interest. And if you define your interest and you acquire a skill on it, either by a college or in vocational or diploma or even practicing or rehearsing, sky will be the limit because you're focusing on your top interest.
Absolutely. One of the things I like to share when we're going through the interest report is to make sure that the students or any client understands that just because an interest is low doesn't mean, I mean, we know they can still have a skill in it. It just means that may not be what they want to do all the time. So one of the examples that comes up a lot is people who have a low social service interest. So where I have the 98 and I'm, I'll sit on a street corner and talk to anybody about Birkman and what can I do to help you. But people who have a low social service score, they'll sometimes look at that and think, but I like people and I do volunteer work. And I said, remember, I said, Birkman interests are really more focused on career path. So your low social interest doesn't mean that you don't want to help people. It's how can I best help people? And that's where we draw the arrow back up to the high interests. And so one of my, because my family is always my example. My husband is an engineer. He has high scientific, high outdoor, high technical. They're in the 90s. He has a lower social service score, but he was one of our son's scout leaders all through scouting. But what Thomas loved to do was, Thomas was always, he and one of the other scout leaders, they were always the ones that would go out and find the campsites if they were going to do a camp out, they would find the best campsites. Or when they got there, Thomas was the one that would teach them how to find the right place to pitch your tent and how do you pitch your tent so that you don't get water in it. Or if we're going to look at the stars, how do you use the telescope? So what was he doing? He was helping, but he was helping through his high interest, what he loved to do, being outdoors, doing something technical, hands-on. And so I try to remind all my clients, just because sometimes they'll look at a low interest score and they'll think, but I do that and I do that well, or it's not a question of not doing it well. It's like you said, we need to come back up to those high interests, because it's how can I do my best in social service, or how can I find, so for a student that has all those high red interests, sometimes I'll say, and they'll say low social service, I'll say, what are you doing for volunteer work, for community service, for your college application? And they're not sure what to do. And I said, well, this looks like you might enjoy doing Habitat for Humanity and helping people build homes. Or, where can you find or do something where you're outdoor, helping to do a beach cleanup? And that's where they get their energy. Remember, the high interests are our motivators. That's where we get our energy from. They're like, oh, okay, I can go out and do that and it will speak to my high interest. So whether it's my career or whether it's volunteer work, then we're still focusing on what do we truly like to do. And then that just helps us find our energy, find our focus, and we can start picking it's like the young lady I shared that was the biology major when she really did need to be the journalism major. And once she made the transition back to journalism, she was like, I am so happy. And she's thriving at what she's doing.
Well, what you're saying is so deep, and it leads me to just an idea just come up right now, Andy. It's about I almost say to my clients, the low social service is not about every human likes to help people. That there is a type of a people. I'm 96, you're 98. We never end helping people. We stop in anything and trying to help people endless. And sometimes even on our, side. But the thing is, the low social service, most likely, and correct me if I'm mistaken, those type of people, they love to help people so they can help themselves. In another sense, I'll teach you how you can fish, but I'm not going to be able to give you the same fish each and every day, in a sense. And leads me to an idea. In our area and even in states, they're really focusing on nonprofit organizations. And just an idea just pops in my mind. So every human love to help people, but you need to know what types of help that you can just even contribute in the society. So if I can work with nonprofit organizations and then do the Birkman assessment with them on all the employees for specific nonprofit organizations, so we can just even help those people to help others on their interest. And this is going to impact in the whole society. As you're saying, you can help people in building houses, you can help people teaching them in IT if you have the experience, if you have high technical, high scientific, and if you have high music, you might just even help people on it's not necessary that you don't like to help people, but this is also could be a very helpful for the nonprofit organization employees to
Oh,
give them
yeah.
the awareness what they can help each others. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. And so like somebody who has a high numerical, they might be really good at helping somebody else figure out how to make a budget or how to help them with their taxes. So again, always go back to the high interests, and then what does that look like in any industry? That's that's another thing that I try to and I know it's hard for teenagers to adults will see it better than a teenager. But I said, it's not just the job, it's also, and it's not just the career, it's what industry am I in? Am I in the right industry? So I have another client who is a CPA, and
Mhm.
she thought she was not happy. She thought she was in the wrong. She said, I've been to college, I'm an accounting major and a CPA. Did I pick the wrong major? And it wasn't that she picked the wrong major. She was in the wrong industry. She'd been working in banking and insurance. And
Mhm.
you and I know that's very yellow, very rigid,
Mhm.
very systematic. She was more from her personality side, she was more green and blue. And
Mhm.
she made a transition to working for a nonprofit because it was
Mhm.
a different environment. And so when she started working for this nonprofit, she was like, "Oh, these are my people,"
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
they're going to be the personalities.
That's my comfort zone. This is what I can
That's
just,
where the components come back
yeah,
in. They're so
absolutely.
important. It's like I'm working with more people who are more on the blue-green side, but I'd been working in an industry where the people were more yellow or more red-yellow. And she said, but that wasn't me. So she didn't have the wrong career, she had the wrong industry. And so that's part of the coaching, and even trying to introduce that to a student. It's like, just be thinking about what industry will my major be the best fit for.
This is what I love about this tool, the way that Roger Birkman did, and how you can just even get all this data and put it as a puzzle in terms of the interest and then the component, the usual, the need, and the stress behavior, the organization focus, and the work style. How you can just even put all these puzzles
I
together
know.
in a sense of like, I almost say to my client, uh, imagine, God forbid, you're going to a doctor and then you have something wrong, and then what the doctor is going to do is going to do an X-ray for you, or some analytical. It's the Bergman, it's your MRI. I connect the whole things and give you
Yes.
what can just even boost your awareness about yourself and even about your family and the society that you live, because eventually it's going to boost the emotional intelligence and the social intelligence for you, being aware of who you are and how people behave and what makes people trigger an interest. It takes you to another level of the things. Let me just go through. Did you ever work with a fresh graduate finishing the college and high school? I mean, the university, college. Did you just even coach some of them? How the tool can help them on finding their job search and
Yes, and I have worked with some that are actually, that are graduating from college, and so that's where the industry part becomes very important. That's the perfect example. Was I have a degree in accounting, or I have an engineering degree, and so I said, so now when you start interviewing for your jobs, I said, it's not just the engineering job or just the accounting job. It's what's the environment going to look like when I get there, and when I'm interviewing, what's the atmosphere, what's the culture feel like? And that's where the personality alignment really comes into play. So oftentimes I'll use the example, and when they come back to me after they've had an interview, I said, well, so if we have company A and company B, and it's essentially the same job description, but company A is going to pay a little bit more. But when you interviewed and you talked with the people, your instinct said, but I like these people a little better in company B. That's probably because that's where your needs are being met. That's where the culture, the fit for your personality, as it's not just the job, it's the personality. And so again, and Birkman, because Birkman has all these wonderful reports in their library, we can refer, because they have the interview report and they have the job search report. And so I will pull those reports for any of my clients that are in college. I pulled the interview report and the job search report and say, well, let's walk through how you're probably going to go about your job search, or when you get ready to do an interview, what is that going to look like? I'll use my own daughter as an example. When she first graduated from college with her bachelor's degree, she currently works in advertising. She's a creative director, but she started out in graphic design, and she's in new media. So she's gone from that to being an art director to a creative director. So to all the parents that are worried about a creative career, yes, she has a very solid creative career that pays well. So I know that that works. But when she was first, she was in Dallas and she was interviewing with a small print production company. And so we reviewed her Birkman before she went into this interview. And we reviewed the colors, and just as a sense of, well, we don't know who you will encounter and what that will look like. And she called me that evening after the interview and she said, I talked to every color in Birkman today. She said, I didn't just interview with one person. They had me go through the whole company. And she said it started with some students that were interns. So she said they were more green and more comfortable and chatty. And she said, when I got to the sales and marketing department, she said those people were all very green, and she could just walk through it. Now she's kind of a blue yellow, and she's that ambivert. She's a little more quiet, a little more reserved, but she's not a deep introvert. She's an ambivert. And then she said, when I was obviously talking to the other designers, they were very blue. She said, when I went out to the building where they actually run all the where they have all the equipment and they're running everything, she said, they were all red. She said the account manager was very yellow. She said her desk was immaculate. She had a list of questions. But what it did for Anna was, she said, it prepared me reviewing my Birkman. She said, then it didn't really matter what personality style I encountered. I was using my Birkman to kind of read the room and read the people. And she said, but what was really interesting was, from the first interview she had, they would always tell her, well, when you meet, and I actually forget the gentleman's name, but I'll just say Chris. When you meet Chris, don't let him scare you. And Anna had no idea what they meant. So then she goes to the next department and she's talking to them, and they say, now when Chris talks to you, don't let him, don't let him worry you. And she's like, who is this Chris and what is going on? And she said, then when they brought her into the room to meet with him, before the woman who brought her in, before she left the room, she said, now Chris, you be nice to her. And so Anna sat there and she said, well, he didn't look strange, he didn't look mean.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, but when he started asking her questions, she said immediately her brain went to Birkman and she went, oh, he's a red. He's just very direct and gets to the point, because his interview questions were all very bullet point.
True.
And I told Anna, and so she was totally fine and relaxed. And she said, and I just responded to him the same way. I gave him very succinct answers, and it was very direct and less conversational. And I said, do you see how sad that was for the whole company? That they have this perception of Chris as being, of this gentleman, of being very rigid, very, maybe a little too impatient or a little too blunt, when in fact, he's a really nice guy. He's just very direct. But no, everybody was warning her. And I thought, oh, wow. I said, that company needs Birkman.
Yeah, of course.
And Anna actually went to work for the company. And she said, the person I liked working for the most was him, because he would tell me what he needed done and he would leave me alone to do it and I would get it done.
Wow.
So there's the impact of, that's why I tell students, you're learning your Birkman superpowers today. So Anna could take that into that. She was a college graduate interviewing for jobs. And so I've always shared that with college graduates to make sure. I said, when you walk into an interview situation, I said, I just want to make sure you're aware of your Birkman, but it will help you read the room. And one of the personality assessments I am finding that I have to do a lot more coaching with is the assertiveness score. Because if I'm working with a very blue personality who has a low assertiveness score, you and I know that that personality style is going to come across, if they're high self-consciousness too, they're going to be very soft-spoken, more low-key.
Sensitive, very sensitive.
And then what happens is the person who's interviewing them, and we have found this with the college interviews too. If that person is very low key, very soft spoken, their voice or their strength or their leadership may not come through because they're not the same high energy as the reds and greens. So I have to, the code word for my blue clients is, when you go into that interview, I need you to be green for a while. And the green is, I need to be more conversational. I need to show up with some energy. And I said, and I promise when you're done with that interview, you probably want to go home and take a nap, because that blue will have used all their energy to look a little more extroverted or outgoing. And we know that's not their usual style. So, but that's all part of the coaching is, what does their Birkman look like? How can we accentuate their strengths? What might they need to do to make sure their voice is heard, or people realize that it's not just that I have the skill, it's that you can be confident that I will be great in this position.
That's amazing. Let me just take you through, if you allow me, I'll share with you one of the John Public Q reports.
Okay.
We have to, now we're making some modification on these two reports, and I'll tell you about it. But let me share with you the John Q student report and then John Q job seeker reports. And if you can just give me the insight of that reports, and might help others. This is John Q public reports, and this is the way that we've done by Amy. This is designed by Amy. We're using this report, which is here. It's giving the what is the content, introduction, map, career exploration, etc. And here it gives some introduction about the report and the career campus, what it do for the students. And here mostly these questions we ask the students, and we see what exactly their answers and let me enlarge it so you can see it much more better. And then here we talk about the map. With the students, we don't go with the symbols, but in the new report, which is going to be in March, it's going to be, instead of the color, where is exactly the symbols, the usual behavior, the interest, and etc. And if you can see, this is John Q report, and his interest is in green, his usual behavior is in green, and his need is in yellow. And the stress, of course, is in yellow. So just your advice to the students, if you are coaching him, what you can tell him from just in a summarized way on his report of his map.
Are they going to actually see the interest report and see all 10
interests? Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to take you step by step.
Oh, okay. So this part, which these statements are very helpful. I mean, they are very general. I do try, when we're looking at the map without any symbols and just looking at the colors, then the descriptions that you have up here, I mean, they're fine. It's just a reminder to the student that this is like the mile high view. We're just looking at it from a high level. And it'll just say, in general, these are going to be from an interest standpoint where, you know, we see you might have interests that have to do with people and working with people. And then as you go through the behavior, so your descriptors are fine. It's just the reminder to the client that these are high level statements and that there is more
Absolutely.
behind the scenes.
Yeah, and let me just take you through the interest, which is you'll love more. And this is John Q. Look at his top: social service, 82, persuasive, 76, and then numerical, 74, and then technical, 66.
Okay, pause
Visual,
there for just a minute. I'm just looking at the statements, some of the statements that you wrote. Wait a minute. No, you're fine. Okay, so all right, so you're showing statements that when you
Low
say
and high.
low, and you're doing low and high, and then they're looking at their score of 66, for example.
Which
So
is the high.
which is their high, but if I'm talking to them about technical, then they are in that scale of 1 to 99. They're somewhere in that middle. So some of these statements on the left might apply, and some of the statements on the right might apply.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And the most focus, we're talking
Right.
about his top four, which is the social service, the persuasive, and
Right.
the numerical side.
Numerical and technical. Okay.
Yes. And then you go on visual. Again, it's as you're saying, some of it is on the right, some of it. But when you go down, there is musical and even process, which is administrative, and then research, which is scientific, 37, and then the outdoor is very low, and then the literary is very low. So basically, this is John Q, and this is the way that we do it. And then one of the things here, which is the majors, if you can see the lowest majors that match is transportation materials. And then if you go to the top, which is again, we're talking about construction, instructions, and then management. And the beautiful about it, then when we do about with the, and this is one of the things, as you're saying, I'll just quote what you said just an hour ago about the students advising them to go and do their homeworks about where he wants to study, what sort of a major, and what's that majors. For instance, if we're saying, let's say, electricians, if we just even, if you can see right now, it takes you to the ONET. You can see it?
Oh, no, it didn't take me to ONET, but I know it's going to take you to ONET and give a description.
Yeah.
There it is.
Now,
There's ONET.
yeah.
Right.
So it takes
Right.
you to,
And gives them more information about it and what kind of education is required. No, it's great. Absolutely.
and one of the things, because we have it if he wants to study in the States, this is about it. But if he or she, the students, wants to study in the Middle East, so what we did for the Middle East University, this is what you need to focus on.
Right. Okay, so this is, pause that right there, because these two right here, this is a great example, let's just say from the United States. If I'm looking at high construction, but I'm also seeing high management, and I know from the interest that there was the high persuasive, that's okay. But
High persuasive, high social service.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So go back, keep going go back to the management and the construction. This is a perfect example. If I'm working, okay, right there, stop, bring it back up, a little higher, a little higher. Okay. So here's a great example. Now we know there's others behind that too, but if I just, what I try to encourage all my clients is never just look at one job family in isolation. So we don't just look at construction. We know that construction is one of the many options because they've obviously got two long bars here. So we know that could lead, it's like the plumber who might end up owning their own company. So I've got a client, I've got a student has high construction, but also has high management. So in the United States, we have several universities that it's usually going to be in the College of Agriculture. That's where in the United States where we find it, but it could be in the School of Business. And it is a very popular major, and it's either construction engineering, which is actually in engineering, or it's construction management, or sometimes called construction science. So if I've got a student that has this high construction and also has this management, that's when we would talk about, well, you might be a good fit for Texas A&M University because they have a Bachelor of Science in construction science, and it will be both that hands-on, you know, how do you go out and lead a team to build that high rise, but you'll also be getting the business courses that help you develop your management skills. So this is where I love to make sure that clients don't just look at these by themselves. We look at where do the job families overlap, come together, relate to one another. And that's a perfect example of, we have several universities that have specific business degrees or management degrees in construction science.
Wow, that's amazing. And one of the other things in the reports that this is the strength. We pull the top 3 strengths of the students.
Okay.
So you can relate that when you just do your puzzles. And then you put some questions. How's this behavior? And you can share it with your families. So, and then,
Stop. I just want to see the 3 questions below here. Wait a minute. So how do you see these behaviors? Oh, this is great. Just a minute. I want to share something. Ask your family and teachers how they have seen these characteristics, and then other characteristics. All right. So this is excellent. And this is where I would really strongly encourage the students to actually write out their answers or talk to their parents about it, because for the United States, almost every college requires a college essay. And there's usually a general essay. The most popular one in the United States recently has been Tell Us Your Story. And your story is, where's there a challenge or where there is something that you want to share, a strength. And so if they have been filling out this part of the of the Birkman, they've already started putting on paper words about themselves. They're learning how to write about themselves. And that's going to actually help them write their college essays.
Amazing. Amazing. And we go to the expectation, which is extracted from the needs. The top 3 and the rest of the needs.
Oh, that's great.
And then
now, okay, so for a moment, so if I'm working with a student and we get to this part, this is where, because remember, I always ask, especially teenagers, but every client, I always say, can you give me an example of what this looks like for you? So where it says you need others to be direct and forthright with you, I said, can you share an example with me where that's important to you, whether it's a teacher, an athletic coach, a parent, and I wait for them to try to come up, because sometimes it's hard for them to come up with an answer because they're not thinking about it. But if we start asking them the questions during their Birkman review, it gets them used to thinking about it, because that's
they're gonna open up. They're gonna open up more with you.
And that's why I always ask a parent to sit in on it, because then what I'll say, if the student is really struggling, sometimes they'll come up with an answer right away. But if the student is struggling to think of an example, then I ask the parent, I said, can you share an example of where you see this in your student? And the parents almost always have it, they can say, oh, well, don't you remember this? So what I'm trying to do is get them to talk to each other. And I said, that's the conversation, because I said, when you apply to colleges, you're not just writing an essay that says I'm a great leader. They want an example of how you've demonstrated leadership. So I said, so that's why I'm asking you questions to start thinking of that now. And these are, by going over these, like you need time alone with 1 or 2 close friends. So I'll ask them, tell me a time when you've had a great time with a group of friends, but you were ready to go home and just hang out with your family? And they, they can answer that. And so I said, that's great. I said that way it helps me know that they're getting the message from their Birkman. This is great.
And the last thing is, this is the most important things.
Oh, I love the learning styles. Yes.
Yeah. So we put it there. And I had a meeting with the Birkman. I'm changing on it. And if you don't mind, I'll let Haifa send you a couple of these reports, the student report, and I need your insight because what I've done, I suggested to Birkman it's gonna be on process to change this reports. First of all, I suggested them instead of the color, I need to see the sample. So it can give you more clear. And the other thing, I don't want to see the major at the beginning. I want to see it in the last. I wanted to see the interest first. And in the interest, I don't want to see both the low and the high. I need the indicators to be according to the score, not to make them. Yeah.
Right. That's what was confusing me. That's why I needed to pause and look at that.
Yeah. And the other thing I requested from them is to add the organization focus on the student report, because this is going to give me more insight of what the industry exactly they should go.
See, they in the basics report, they took away I mean, if I'm using a signature report, I can see organizational focus. If I'm using basics, I can't see the organizational focus. And that you make a really good point, because that's the report. That pyramid is what helps them see visually what culture, what environment. Remember when I talked about if the student's comparing company A with company B? Well, if their bottom bars are red and yellow, but one company is more blue-green, that could drive them crazy. And so if they've got the organizational focus to look at, it can help direct them to pay more attention to what kind of culture or work environment will I be in this company.
I think Haifa will send you that, and I'd love to hear your comment, because they promised us on March or April, they're going to do the modifications that we requested. So I'd love from you, if you have any comments to be added in that report, because we're flexible with Birkman. We can add anything that we wanted on that report.
Well, I'm gonna agree with you about the symbols on the map, because I don't care for just the blocks of color. Because yes, I mean, it tells me something, but you and I know, if I know where that asterisk is, if it's close to the red, if it's closer to the blue, now.
Or if it's in the middle, it might confuse the people, because you get a multi of things of interest. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, if I can see the symbol, then when I'm doing this overview part, that's part of the explanation, is to say, because you and I know that you and I could both have, okay, so you and I both have a red diamond. Now, I don't know where your red diamond sits on the map, but my red diamond is very close to the intersection, and it's very close to the green. So I don't know.
Mine is in the top, in the edge between the green and the red.
Okay, so can you see, but in both cases, you and I would, on our usual behavior, you and I would both have a red block, but it means something very different.
Definitely.
And so if I have the symbol, even from the high level view, I can talk to that student about that. I can, I can say, so for me, I'm that classic chameleon. I'm the one that I operate from kind of all four of the colors. I can be very direct, but I can also back off sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're much higher on the red, so you're going, for you, I like the symbols. I've never cared for just the blocks of color. I want to see I mean, I want the block, but I want to see where my symbol sits on it, even from the high level view.
True, true. And the other reports that I wanted to share with you, and I'd love to hear your comments on it, whenever you can just have a time, because we need to send to the Birkman if there is any modification on it. The other reports, if you can see it right now, they say I'll share it with you. It says the career campus.
Oh, this is the job seeker. Okay.
The job seeker. So the job seeker, it's the same. We go
Mhm.
with Amy on the same stuff that shows everything like the student reports. What makes it different after the expectations and the strengths, and we go here.
Oh, okay. You're pulling the leader from the, yes. Okay. That's
So
helpful.
we pull this, and then we pull what you love, the interview technique.
Wait, can you pause? Would you go back to, okay, on the leadership traits though? That's just listing all three. It's not really telling me which one has the
Higher.
higher score.
Exactly. And this is one of the things that we're asking for the modification on it.
Yes, because all this would tell me as a college student or anybody that's on the job seeker side is that, yes, these are three styles. And okay, so I have never really cared for Amy's career report because they took away the traditional Birkman colors.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
now what you've included the colors, but I would want the colors that are attached to this.
Yeah, and the score, you mean?
Well, I want the score. I definitely
Yeah.
want the score.
And this is one of the things that will add on our and it's the interview technique.
And then here's your interview, and so that's your usual, that's your need. And then do you have the stress part as well? And then there's the
Yes.
stress. And see, you combined, that's great. You've done the job search and the interview together. So that's great. Because I always include that with my college students.
And then here we put some questions.
Okay, just give me a minute to read them. Oh, I like that. That's good. Because when they are interviewing for a job, being able to answer some of these could show up as interview questions. So for example, when it talks about if they're asking them, well, okay, you and I know in a job interview, two really common questions. They start off with, tell me about yourself. And so that's when we refer to the Birkman Strengths page as, you don't, not to memorize those statements, but to pull from them and then be ready to supply an example. But the other interview question is, what are some of your strengths? And so that's where looking back. So for example, like knowing what their leadership trait is, or knowing, from the work that they've done, being able to identify with what they consider to be their top three strengths, then it's okay. Now be prepared to provide. What you could add there is it says, for example, what are your top three strengths? You could add a question in there that says, can you provide an example of how you demonstrate that strength?
Perfect. So
that sets them up for a job interview. That's when they're going to say, well, if they consider leadership to be one of their strengths, then they're going, the follow-up question is, well, tell me where you've demonstrated that leadership in whether it's, some college activity or some other job. So then they've got an example ready to go.
Let's have us send you both. And if you can just even put from your experience, whatever you like to see in that report, so we'll have it and add it to our requirements so they can work on it. And then we'll have that reports both of most likely in March or April ready to be published. Because it took me like since 2018 when I was in States there, in Houston in Birkman office, the idea came to me from the career canvas and extracting it instead of just relying on the signature, which is, 32 pages. I know you and I, we can just sit and find the major, but this is gonna summarize the whole things and make it very direct to the students or even
Right.
fresh graduated job seekers what you need to start, and which is minimize the time of the sessions with the student instead of going to the 32 pages of the signatures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's why this is very, and guess what? This is one of the things that we don't sell it to the students just with the along with the sessions. The cost of it to the students, and the language is very easy. The students can read it by themselves, and if they need for some more coaching sessions, you and I, and then you can charge for the time that you spend it with the students. So I'm trying to target my aim, my goal in this two reports, Wendy, is to target a huge number of the students around the area in the Arabic areas, because some of the countries they cannot afford even $100 as students to
Right.
do this
Right.
assessment. So we're trying just to do it not inexpensive and trying to boost the awareness on those students in a way or another.
So is this report designed to be self-read and not have any coaching along with it?
No, it's designed to be self-read, and at the same time, you need, and this is what I advise. I do the coaching sessions. It doesn't take like half an hour from me that much
Right.
with
Right.
this. It's more than enough that do it to an adult for 1 hour and a half and go through the whole thing. So with the students, it needs, because you and I, we know still the students in the high school, they're not aware of their behavior and their expectation and how people treats them. Still, as you
Right.
stated, sometimes you ask the students, what is your dream job? And they don't have an answer. I don't
No.
know. I don't know. That's why I came. That's why I did the Birkman. So, what is
Exactly.
your hobbies? What is your hobbies? What do you do just beside the school? And sometimes, well, we do, this guy gaming and on the net
Yeah.
and, and all this stuff. So, what makes you motivated? What do you go for camping? Do you go? And they don't know, but sort of a questions you and I as a coach, when we ask the students, it's a kind of building the awareness about what they like, what they dislike, and this is what it helps them. So this is one of the things I know. I did not even feel the time that being with you for 2 hours. I know that you can speak, and this is not going to be the last time, Wendy. Definitely. And the last thing I wanted from you, I need some advices. I need you from your experience, what's your advice to the student? Secondly, what's your advice to the parents? Thirdly, what's your advice to the school and universities? Yeah. So, what advices that you can just even with your experience give to the people and the students and parents in terms of educations?
Ooh. Well, I think just in terms of people in general, we all have within us, we are born with gifts, talents, interests. We're all wired independently, differently. And so having that awareness of who we are and honoring those differences. And so if it's a parent with a student, it's knowing that their children may not have the same interests they have, may not have the same skills they have. If we're talking about a university to the students, it is about having a variety of options and what's available to students that will meet their needs, and even parents, and just being able to understand themselves better as well. So and everything just kind of comes back to, if the whole world would just take a Birkman assessment, we could improve communication with each other. We could have better understanding and of each other. One of the things we didn't really even talk about, but Birkman is such an amazing application of, is emotional intelligence. And we know when we had COVID that everything shut down. And I know in the United States, coming out of COVID, because it disrupted our educational system, it disrupted jobs, that we have students, we have adults that have more issues with anxiety, with depression, with just trying to cope with changes. And one of the things that Birkman helps us identify within ourselves is what are our needs. That's where those needs scores, Dr. Birkman's needs scores, are such a treasure, because if we are aware of what our needs are, then we can look and see what's going on in our environment, and how can we, we always say sometimes you can't change the environment, but you can manage how you deal with the environment when you know information about yourself. So, if the world would just take a Birkman, then we could have better understanding of ourselves and others, and just, in terms of improving communication, improving options, working with people, being aware of who we are, and respecting the fact that we're not always going to, even within our own families. And I just got through doing a Birkman with twins, and they're different. They're twins, but they are different, and they have some different needs from each other, and they have different interests from each other. And that's wonderful. And so it's respecting and valuing the gifts and talents and the interests that we have, and how can we share that with the world and find a place that fits and honor that. We don't always have to agree with it, but if we can honor it.
Of course. How has Birkman impact your family?
Well, my family is so gracious because they know everything I do revolves around Birkman. So the Birkman signature summary, that, where it has the behaviors and the map and the interests, those are printed out, and they're on a magnet on the side of our refrigerator.
I remember what you told me. That
And
was
they've been there
2014.
for since everybody's taken a Birkman.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I speak Birkman to my family all the time. We always go back to it. And I will say our son and daughter in their respective jobs, even now, they'll when they're talking to me, they can't help it now either. They'll go, okay, I can see where Birkman applies, in this
Yeah.
manner. So we have constant conversations around Birkman. And I view the world, I mean, it's an amazing instrument to see the world with some more clarity and understanding, and actually with patience. It helps us, because we don't always have to agree with how somebody else behaves, but what I can better understand is that that's how they're wired, and they're not being mean, they're not being disruptive, that's just their style. And I can respect that and work with it.
It's always a pleasure and honor. And definitely, we're going just to meet very soon, either online or even face to face. And can't wait for that. And Haifa is going to send you these two reports. I'd love from you if you could do it. I'm not going to push you as a red ASAP, but I'd love to see your comment. What do you need to see else in these two reports so we can share it with the Berkman before they do the final change on it?
Okay.
Whatever it comes to your mind, either a question or something. And I told you what I told him. I'm gonna put the numbers on the leadership style or the management style. As I told you, I'm gonna put the simples. I'm gonna put the interest on the top, and it's gonna be only indicators for the numbers. And I wanted just to ask even Berkman about the vocational, because nonprofit, it's just now there is a lot of majors and diplomas they put it in the vocational in our areas, such like a lot of diplomas in computers, like 2 years, a lot of diplomas in interior designers and even in fashion and stuff like that. So I'd love to share that majors with the Berkman so if they can embed it in the job families, so we can have just even more in terms
Well,
of the
I have
vocational.
I have talked with Patrick Wadlington, who he's the psychometrician that came back and a year ago, I went into Patrick's office and I said, Patrick, that job families report really needs to be updated.
Yes, true.
And I love the job families report. I mean, I appreciate it. But for example, I disagree with the fact that they kept installation as one of the professional, but they took farming, fishing, and forestry out and put it in the non-professional category. And the reason I object to that is farming, fishing, and forestry is really the umbrella for environmental science, environmental studies, environmental engineering. And so I print when a student has or a client has high outdoor, I always pull that version of the job families up to see, because if it has a long bar for farming, fishing, and forestry, I print that version for them, because I want them, because then we want to have a conversation around any career that's environmentally related. They may not want to be a park ranger, but you and I know we've got all these careers, whether it's, wind and hydrology and we've got energy. Everything that revolves around energy and environmental is huge, but none of that is addressed in their job families report. And you're right, when we talk about the vocational side, and that's one of the things I saw at Princess Nora. They've got that whole college of applied, they call it the applied college. Well, we have at the University of Houston, they started with a Department of Technology, and that is now an actual College of Technology. And it's the same thing you're talking about. Yes. Where somebody might want to be an engineering major, but somebody might look like an engineer, but they're not really suited to taking all the calculus and physics, but they still want that hands-on. They know how to fix things, put things together. So yes, our 2-year schools, we call them associate degrees. I saw they're listed as diplomas. Those are fabulous career areas, and yes, they need to be represented on the job families report as well. So I told Patrick, I said, anytime you want to talk about different careers that need to be on that job families report, let me know.
Definitely. If I could just even make a meeting with Mark and even John and in Birkman, if you don't mind, we might just even invite you, because right now one of the initiative in 2030 in Saudi Arabia is focusing on vocational, and I think Birkman can help big time on that.
Well, it's been, as I told you, it's been reintroduced into our high schools in many of them, and they call it CTE, Career and Technology Education. And it is that same emphasis from the high school side that says, yes, we still want you to get more education when you graduate from high school, but we know that some of you may not want to go directly into a 4-year university. You may want a 2-year, we call them an associate's degree or a technical diploma or degree or certification. And so, yes, there's a big emphasis.
They call it CT?
We call it it's CTE, and it just stands for Career and Technical Education. And so we have, so for example, the school district that I used to work for, that I live in, we actually have an addition. We have a separate building. Now the students still go to their traditional high school, but they can take classes over at, we call it, it's named after a former superintendent. It's the Guthrie Center, but it's where students who, for example, have an interest in learning Cisco for the computer application, or some architectural design, or I mean, they've got all these fabulous career and technology areas where students can, while they're still in high school, actually earn these certifications. So when we've got students who graduate from high school that are certified in Cisco and can immediately go get a job and start at $60,000.
Can you provide me with all those majors that under the CTE?
I'll send you the link to this center that's in our district that has all these different career areas. I'll send you the link, and you can see what their programs are.
Thank you so much indeed, Wendy. It was a pleasure, and and it's 11:11, and that's a sign of a number 1111.
Yes,
time.
yes,
Our
yes.
time.
That's okay. I'm okay. I told you I could sit and talk about this forever, so it doesn't matter.
Definitely we'll have another round. I can't just even wait for it. My love and regards. God bless you, for you and for your family, and can't wait to see you in person very soon.
All right.
Thank you
Well, I
so much.
enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.